Yeah, sincerely, thank you. I mean, a writer isn't much without readers, and I really do appreciate the support you've given me, and both in the rap era and with the new project. It's always nice after you sit in the basement for a year writing something that people read it and are excited about it. It makes it all worth it.
So Kyle, nice to see you and talk with you. Been a
Yeah,
super fan, as you know, from when you started rap, and I want to tell you, I had high expectations because I am a rap fanatic, as you remember. So appreciate you
yeah.
stepping in for that. So obviously, as you wrote the Fade character many years before you stepped in for the late great Vince Flynn, what was the transition like as far as going from rap, the character that you wrote, what, 9 books, I think, and then stepped into Fade in, and that character differentiation seems to be so great. So how was it to step back into the character that you created, noting that you had developed rap beyond what Vince Flynn had done? So how hard was it to not necessarily put rap into Fade in, so to speak?
I thought it was going to be really difficult. I actually predicted that it'd be a couple of months before I could really find Fade's voice again after writing in Mitch's voice for so long. And it turns out it took about 2 days. Um,
Hmm.
and I think what it is it's always been weird to me that I got that Mitch rap job because if you read my books, Vince and I wrote nothing alike. We had really different styles. But because of that, I was always really conscious of slipping into my voice and not Vince's because I didn't want to write a Kyle Mills book about Mitch Rapp. Well, I don't think it would have worked. So maybe that's it. In my mind, over all those years, I really had that divided. I had my Vince Flynn voice, and I didn't use mine. I didn't write any other books during that period. So it was there. It was still there in a box somewhere, but I wasn't sure.
Okay.
Great.
What's one of the main things you want people to take away from your books? Like, you want to teach them about a weapon, or identify with a character, or warn them of a plot that's coming? Like, what are you trying to get out?
Definitely not a weapon. I
Okay.
know almost nothing about guns. I have a gun consultant that I literally write gun and then his name and two question marks and send it to him. Um, really, it's really about the threats that are coming. That's what I think about when I write a book. So if I mean, it sort of depends on the era you're writing, and I've been doing it for 30 years. The threats have really evolved, and that's one of the reasons I was excited to write Fade In is because I got to deal with things like, the rise of an incredibly powerful elite class, both in billionaires and politicians, how they can use AI, AI drones and weapons that they have control over. In fact, they have control over everything you see and know everything about you. All those kinds of things, I think, are the threats that are coming down the pike for not only the Americans but humanity.
Mhm.
And I didn't feel like too many people were writing about that. It's kind of a pain to write about because it's not like this guy who's trying to smuggle a bomb or kill a bunch of people or anything. So you have to think about how to keep the action high and everything. But I think that's what's going to take down society, not so much a big war or terrorism or anything like that. I think we're going to do it to ourselves, and that's what I wanted to write about.
It almost seemed like when I was reading this, it was so almost Nostradamus like in predicting what we're dealing with. As like it was almost like Brad, like you and Brad Thor have this ability to kind of predict a couple steps ahead of where the world is, so that when the book does come out, we're in that world. It was fascinating with
Right.
reading this one that
Yeah,
early.
it's really weird to think how fast this stuff moves because when I started Fade In, AI wasn't really a thing. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, people were kind of talking about it, didn't work, and then when it came out, every people was that a year and a half it took me to write it, and people are already thinking, oh no, my job's going to be gone or whatever, or it's going to become so powerful, and it's really interesting to think about how that's going to affect society. I mean, even just the weird things that I put in there, like you know, driverless cars were perfected, that's just a huge employer of American men, and they would suddenly be out of work. And you don't want a lot of American men, young American men, unemployed with access to military grade weaponry running around because that's never gone well in all of history.
Well, like when I was in Arizona last year, it's the first time I ever saw those cars. I was like, what?
Yeah, they drive you
I
to the
bet.
airport in Phoenix.
What? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
So that,
I was just down there and I didn't have the guts, but Don Bentley took one.
oh
I can believe
no.
it.
What did he say about it?
He made it a lot. He said it was great. So the one
No.
thing is, he said it takes a while because they don't let him drive on the highway, I don't think. So you have to take
Oh,
back roads.
well, that's a good
Um,
thing. You don't want to be on the Autobahn with,
Probably is a good thing,
you know.
but it's gonna happen. I'm hoping it happens when I get too old to drive.
Well,
It'll be in there.
the Jetsons, why don't we have flying cars already because of
Oh, I
the
know.
Jetsons? But
I think I'd be happy with just a big van with like a sofa and video games and stuff, and I could just lay in the back and tell it where I want to go.
on James,
Nice.
onward, James, or not you, James. Well, that leads into my question about how, you and Brad and sometimes, Mark Graney, y'all know a lot more than we do. And it's coming true. And it's very scary sometimes, but it's also funny. Like Kyle knew this 2 years before we did. What do you say to that? Or I mean, I know like
It's interesting. I read they did a big study on people who they call super predictors, and they try to get people to do predictions about things. And what they discovered was that the experts do a really bad job, and that there are certain people who are just good at predicting the future. And the key, well, probably the most important thing that those people have was a really, really broad set of interests. So they didn't never zone in on one thing. It's 100 things at once. And I have always been that way. Like my attention span is like this long. It always has been. I'm fascinated with everything. And so, I mean, I'll like do deep dives into, why do whales live so long? Like, I mean, anything, just politics, economics. And so at some point, I think you have all those little threads, and eventually you start to put them together. They sort of like roll up. And I know Brad's the same way. He has really broad sets of interests and likes connecting all the dots. So I think that's how you you do that. And the other thing is, and this is more and more, it's getting harder and harder, is you have to seek out accurate information. And you have to be really skeptical about the information you get. And that's getting really difficult. It's kind of come full circle. When I first started, there was no internet. So to date me. Um, so research was hard. And honestly, as I've told people, one of the reasons I went into thriller is because my father was an FBI agent and everybody I knew was FBI or CIA or Spec Ops. And I thought, oh, I can call people when I get stuck on something. Um, then the internet came and it was glorious. Instead of having to call a bunch of people, you just push a button and tell you the answer.
yeah.
And now, in the last year and a half, maybe 2 years, the internet's become really unreliable. Um, and in ways that you never had to worry about before. For instance, I get a lot of, in my news feed, I get a lot of travel stuff for Spain because I live here. And um, they'll have a picture of my city, beautiful picture of my city, and I'll look at it and I'll think, where was that picture taken? I look at it and look at it, and I realize it looks like Granada, but it's not actually Granada. And
Mm,
so it's somebody used AI and just said, create a picture of a Granada because it's free, right? They don't have to pay a
yeah.
photographer or Shutterfly or something. And so more and more and more of that with video, we used to be able to trust pictures and video and stuff like that. Can't trust anything. Everything has to be double and triple checked. And I made that mistake in describing a city once, and I had mountains in the background, and somebody said there are no mountains in the background, a city I'd never been to, and I pulled up that picture, and there goes that picture, but it wasn't
Hmm.
real.
Oh,
So I think that's the key. But the problem with digging through a lot of accurate information, though, also I think some people really don't like. I think more and more this is true that people are really taken aback when they run into a lot of information that they disagree with, or that offends them. And I feel like I'm pretty casual that way. If it
hmm.
looks like it's right, I'm I'm good with it. I'm not very ideological, I think, which also helps. Because if you're pretty ideological, you're always going to go in that direction. Whereas I'm pretty equal opportunity with which direction I go in.
I think that's kind of a real good segue in my question because I had met you through rap, of course, and going into that and writing as him and knowing you, and then through social media. So then to see Fade and go into kind of like the deep dive of this and getting into the book, my biggest question was how did you, first of all, decide to write a character of a different ethnic background than yourself? Because I believe I was trying to think of any other author that I know or that I love I believe is the same ethnicity as the character they write. Offhand, I couldn't think of anyone different. So, how did you, first of all, choose that decision? But then, how do you find to keep that voice authentic? Because being it's a book, a lot of readers, if they never even see, a pick, they just pick up the book. I wouldn't think they would even be able to know the difference because of how well it's written as a character. But what even led to that kind of creation?
But it's interesting because a friend of mine just sent me an article about how only 16% of Americans read for pleasure, and they are including news.
Hmm.
So it's not very many people. And one of there that obviously going to have a lot of negative effects, but one of them that I never really thought about was they think it's going to reduce people's empathy for one another because reading a book, you have to see through that character's eyes, right? You got a point of view character and you're seeing them, what they think, what they feel, and all that. And it's a unique experience that can't be delivered with movies or whatever. And that's one of the things I've always loved about books. So for me, it's really interesting to write a character who's unlike you and you learn just an incredible amount. I wrote a book where a woman was the main character and what an interesting journey to try to, capture that voice and those thoughts. And same thing here. Yeah, I thought, oh, what would be really interesting, an Arab American, and somebody who has some baggage from the war and all these things. What would that person feel like? What would their upbringing have been like? What would their attitudes be? And I did. I had an Arab American review the book, and he felt like I did a really good job. So that was super gratifying. But you have to research it. You have to look, at interviews with people and what people are saying and all that stuff. I watch a lot of Al Jazeera. So that I find fascinating. Even if you're writing, a psychopath or a terrorist, like why does that terrorist hate Americans? I mean, what's in their background? Did we do something to them? Is it just they were taught in a madrasa? All those things and how you build that character. And then you can, I think it goes back to the predictions of it's not that hard to predict what people are going to do if you can walk in their shoes, but a lot of people can't. They just see them as something that's other and they're wrong and I'm right and all that. And I've gotten to live all over the world. Like I said, now I live in Spain, and you have to interact with a lot of people that are really different than you. When I lived in London, I lived in a very Arab neighborhood, so all my friends are Arab, mostly Libyan, oddly. Um, and so like I've gotten to absorb that, I think, over the years, and I think it's really fun to play with. It's easy for me to do a 60-year-old white guy, you know.
What's the
Gets
fun in
old.
that, huh? As you again step, and I keep referencing rap because obviously I'm such a huge fan. As you go into Fade In, I think I meant when I listened to the Poison Pen, when you're out there with Don, you'd mentioned that I think you'd already written essentially the next chapter of Fade, right? So how do you see, or do you have a general direction that you would, obviously, like I said, you've got Fade In, you've got the next one. Do you see this expanding outward as far as the Fade In Nation moving forward? And again, like I said, I know you got the next book essentially written and what have you, but how do you have a vision for how long this will go on?
Not at all. Yeah, I mean, there's always, as long as there's a story for Fade and interesting things going on in the world, which there seem to
There
be,
always will be.
and things to explore. Yeah, I mean, I'm really interested to see like where he and John Lowe, where their relationship goes,
Sure.
where his relationship with Raya goes. How powerful can John Lowe get? Because there doesn't seem to be much of a limit to it. And I think it's and realistically, like
Sure.
realistically, how can I create a story that he becomes potentially extremely powerful that everybody says, oh yeah, that could totally happen. So I don't want it to ever be, I want all my books for people to look at them and think, yeah, that's probably happening right now. And then potentially in a year, like Don was saying, oh yeah, that happened. So um, yeah, as long as I don't know, as long as there's interesting stuff to write about, and as long as I don't get too old, you know, because
Oh, I
sometimes
for
sometimes you
one,
just want to, yeah, sometimes you just want to kick back with a glass of wine and
there you go.
start thinking about retirement, right?
Well, don't do that anytime soon. Please keep going.
Please. Yeah.
I'll bring you a bottle of wine and you can
Perfect.
keep
And a
Oh,
on
good
keeping
sorry.
and a
on.
cake.
Yeah,
All
okay.
right. Okay.
Man, I
Take it
got it.
easy,
And
Dave.
thank you for signing this, by the way.
Oh
This means
yeah,
the
absolutely, my
world
pleasure. I'm
to
glad
me,
you got
man.
that. I swear to God that I got that right before we, like the day before we left from Spain
I
for Spain or
tried to,
something. I
you
was
told
really
me you're leaving
sweating it
like on the
out.
19th, and I got it out fast. So thank you. It's going to go to my collection. So thank you.
Pleasure.
Hey, Kyle, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
By the way, I'm a coffee guy, so if you want some coffee, let me know.
I
Um,
do not drink coffee. Never have had
okay.
a cup of coffee in my life, oddly.
Well, you're still a great writer. Don't worry.
My wife, though, she'd be grateful.
So when you took over for Vince and then Don took over for you, what's that transition like? Like how do you get into that headspace or that role or there's certainly expectations. How do you learn how do you stay in your lane but it's not your car? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I
Robot
mean, when
coffee.
I did it, I went back and read the entire series over the course of like 3 months. It's my full-time job. And took notes and everything and tried to figure out how to capture his voice, what exactly his voice was, what he did well, what maybe I did well, and they didn't necessarily coincide. For instance, long action sequences I had never done. So I had to figure out how to do those and sort of study how he did them. And I think that transition for me was really the Wild West because, Vince had died kind of at the peak of his popularity and his talent. And no one really, I think everybody was a little frozen. No one really knew what to do with it. I remember thinking that maybe they just wouldn't continue because I was a fan.
Mm.
And so that I kind of built that a little bit. Like I'd call them and say, okay, this is what I want to do. This is how I feel like the tone should be and all these. And they were great. They really gave me a lot of rope to do that. But I also kind of really felt like the guardian of it. I mean, I was to some extent. I mean, I was creating the next step in Rap's life, so I felt that really deeply because I was also a fan, and that I really want to screw that up. It's the old if it ain't broke, don't fix it kind of thing. So, um, yeah, and he left me with a bear of a book too, because it was meant to arc into another book, but he killed the bad guy. And so you're like, we're going into like continuing the story without a bad guy. I would have loved to have known how he was what he was planning, but the truth is, I don't think Vince planned ahead that much like I did. And he probably would have been sitting there thinking, "Oh my God, I can't believe I killed the bad guy."
Um, well, one of the things I love that you do is, we're kind of near the same age, so you always put in like Bugs Bunny and Roadrunner, and it just really, like, you have to connect with readers, and not saying that that's the only thing you do that connected with me, but action, I've always been an action girl, and so I just love any action scenes that you do, but also when you make me laugh, because if if it's not an interesting character, we can always go back to Mitch, because you always just the back and forth with them, and but when you did it with Fade, it was different but kind of the same. And so I was wondering, one thing I don't think I put on my sheet was how do you get to those scenes where, okay, the action has died down and we just need a little laughter here, and give us some of that.
Yeah, I mean it's funny because the I didn't change almost anything when I started the rap series. Like stylistically, I wanted to be the same. The only thing I changed was I added more humor. Because I like it. I like that roller coaster feel where, like you say, you have this big action sequence, and then at the end of it, you get to like break the tension, and then it builds you up for the next one. And so Fade obviously has a very weird sense of humor. And I don't know that it would necessarily appeal to everybody, but it appeals to me. So I guess that's okay. And but I feel like his attitudes and his observations and the dark sense of humor kind of creates that roller coaster ride. That I always think of Indiana Jones, right?
Mhm.
Like it's incredible action sequence, and then it's kind of you're like, oh my God, and then it's kind of funny and mellow for a little while, and then you calm down and you're off guard, and then all of a sudden it's like something horrible happens again.
Mhm.
And then as far as like the time stuff, the things like the Looney Tunes and the Go-Go's and all these things. I don't know if you guys have ever watched a movie. It's called Blue Velvet. It was by David Lynch, and all of David Lynch stuff is really strange, but it didn't have a time period. So like the cars were from the 50s, but then the guy had a boombox from the 70s, but and so there was no real time period to it. And I was kind of inspired by that because I wanted to keep it a little ambiguous as to how long Fade had been in a coma. I mean,
Yeah.
I first wrote that book 20 years ago. I didn't want to, he couldn't have been in a coma for 20 years. I mean, he would have never
Mhm.
come back from that, and he would have been pretty old. So I really wanted to create this like ambiguity in the setting and like his flashbacks and stuff, that there was no time that you could completely nail down. And then it sort of becomes a non-issue. And that was fun because yeah, a lot of that stuff was from my,
Yeah.
Bugs Bunny from my childhood and
Yeah.
the Go-Go's from like when I was maybe in high
Scooby
school.
Doo.
And the
Yeah.
Mystery Machine.
Scooby-Doo was a huge fan of Scooby-Doo
Yeah.
until they introduced Scrappy.
Yes. Thank you.
Ruined
I
it.
concur.
But yeah.
One thing when I was reading the book and didn't even think about it, like I'm a huge Mission Impossible fan. So to see that kind of just that couple chapters and then start watching it and didn't reading the book and seeing them with the team building, and you've created this team now where in a lot of times in books you've got your heroes always the guy and they're kind of superfluous they're there,
Yeah.
but these were like all fleshed out to the point where how do you have plan? And you talked about like the Fade universe, and ever think about building these characters that I think they could stand on their own as their own characters. Like I would love like Matt or Daniel or I apologize for mispronouncing Linnae. Like I would love they built themselves and you built them this team with him, and they all have these great parts, and they're not the secondary to him. But if you
Yeah,
even Ed,
I love characters like that. I love relationships between characters. So they're complicated. I mean, certainly they're complicated. For instance, like Linnea doesn't like Fade. I don't
yeah.
like really at all. And Danny, he didn't care one way or another what's happening. He'll just kill whoever you tell him to kill and then wander off. So yeah, I mean, I wanted to create a team of, I mean, Fade's obviously the lead and everything, but kind of a team of equals who all have strengths that the other one doesn't. As opposed to
Mhm.
Mitch Rapp, who is kind of the master of his universe. He's the best at everything.
Yeah.
Fade can't shoot as well as Linnea. He's not as like steady as Danny. He's his own entity. And to me, what Matt put together was this group that has, with all three of them together, they have no weaknesses.
Yeah.
Any one of them, particularly Fade, you have no idea what that guy's going to do next. So you can, you wouldn't want him off on his own, without a little bit of babysitting. And that's kind of what I wanted to create. And then you have somewhere to jump off from, particularly like him and Linnea. Where's that relationship going to go? Are they going to come to terms with one another? Because like in the next book, he just loves to wind her up, because she's so easy.
Yeah.
And so she just gets madder and madder and madder. But a guy like Fade, how could he resist? So
Yeah.
where's that relationship going to go? I don't, and the answer is I don't know any of these things because you can't plan too far ahead, particularly in this world.
Yeah. I don't, not to give anything away, because uh being with the new rap book coming out and some of those characters in the book, we gotta go back a little bit. So it'd be fascinating to see with these characters going forward. There's so much that you can play with, and you've already in the one book created such vivid characters. It's exciting to see that and be a part of it from the ground up.
Yeah, and it's funny. I just had written a chapter that we find out what John Lowe gave Linnea and Danny to sign on.
Oh,
He's the guy who always gives you what you need.
yeah,
And I was like, I've got to figure out what motivated them, particularly, because they're such characters that you wouldn't think would get involved in something like that.
yeah,
Has to be something like pretty good. And
Mm.
so that was really fun. And then that deepens their character. Now you know a little bit more about where they're from, and all that stuff. Do they have significant others? Because all you just got the surface of them, their personalities and stuff. You don't know that much about them yet. And Fate doesn't either. So kind of a fun thing you can just deepen and explore over
yeah.
time.
Can't wait for the next one. Not wait. And I was
Yeah.
going to ask again, when are you coming to North Carolina? I will always ask that.
Somebody's got to invite me. I
I,
need a bookstore to invite me.
I'll go
We're
find one.
we're we're pretty easy dates, author. If you invite us and dangle, a little ham and some
There you
wine
go.
in front
I'll
of
tell
us,
you what, I'll find a
it's
bookstore then.
yeah, it's not too tough. As Craig Johnson said once, I'd speak to a laundromat with two people in it if they gave me a drink.
What's your favorite wine?
I don't know, what did we drink? The Alexander Valley when we're at home. Here, there's just so many, because we're in Spain, right?
Yeah.
So I think we drink
Yeah.
something different every day. We just kind of there's walls of it, so we just plow through it from left to
Is
right.
there a winery like right next door or something?
There are a lot of them.
Pretty
Yeah,
much.
Granada makes a fair amount of wine, but I mean Spain just makes huge amounts.
Yeah.
Where we live, it's mostly olives.
Mm.
So there must be, I do not exaggerate when I say there are probably a million olive trees around us. I mean, they cover the mountainsides and all that. So wine, olives, all the stuff that makes life worthwhile. Olive oil, wine, ham, sunshine.
Or just going back to rap again. Of all
Sure.
the characters that you developed, once you took over new characters, I think I know the answer to this, but I want to see if I'm right. What was your favorite character that you actually created to bring into the rap universe?
Uh, so new character. 'Cause I was gonna say also like Scott Coleman didn't have much of a role or a distinct personality before I took over, but I always loved that character and thought there was somewhere you could go with him. Um, I mean, that one's easy. It's Grisha
That's
Azarov
what
for
I was thinking.
sure.
That was,
Yeah.
I
I
love that
mean,
character.
and that character is so that I mean, I remember I didn't call and ask people the Vince's editor and agent and stuff too many things over the course, but that one I did. I said I'm going to create a character that Vince probably would have never created, and he is going to be an equal for Mitch, and Mitch has never met his equal. Do you mind? And they said, no, no, that'll work. It'll go ahead. See, we'll see what happens. And I love that because Mitch had never
Nope.
like met anybody he couldn't plow through, and he couldn't plow through Grisha, and Grisha's motivations were so different than
Right.
Mitch's. Mitch is like out there to save the world and save America, and he's all super patriotic. And Grisha, if you asked him, he'd be like, "Why do you do this?" He'd say, "I don't know, because I'm good at it." You know.
That's
Um,
right. Yep.
and so I really love that. And then I brought him back, which was super
Yep.
fun.
Yeah,
So
that
I one of my favorite scenes I think I ever wrote, I think it was the one where I brought him back. And um, Mitch has to go down to Costa Rica and he takes Claudia and they're sitting in a bar. And Claudia's
waiting for him.
terrified of Grisha because
Yep.
she almost killed her husband. And because he almost killed her husband. And Mitch like orders two wines and the guy brings me, he's like, no, they're both for her. And then Grisha comes up and she's like, he's right behind me, isn't he?
I love that. Love that
And
scene.
yeah, and then Grisha's like, I feel like I should be paid, and Mitch gives him $1.
That dollar. Love that.
But I love that scene, and I love the scene where they have to fight together when the team comes after Grisha and Mitch realizes it. And you got to see these two guys who are both amazing, like fighting against this team. Yeah, he was a fun character, and I always thought I might bring him back at some point, but in my mind, he just got really fat and like he's just like surfing in Costa Rica, and he's like 50 pounds overweight.
And he did his time.
He deserved it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
he
right.
deserved a nice retirement.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for answering our
But I
question.
did almost do that. And like Mitch goes and he's like, oh my God, he's gotten fat.
Oh my
Well,
goodness.
that's what got me to your books was Red
What?
War. Red
What was
War. Me,
it?
Grisha is the one that got me there.
Interesting. Because a lot
Yeah.
of people, it's funny, probably
Hmm.
the biggest negative reaction I ever got to a book that I wrote in that series was Red War.
I
And
know,
I'm
and I
Really?
not
don't
sure why.
understand it.
Yeah, I've never been able to pin down why. When everybody says they're like, probably the best that somebody said to me was, it's a really good thriller novel, but it's not a really good Mitch Rapp thriller novel. And maybe that's true. He wasn't in it as he wasn't quite as much the main character as he was in some of the other. That's just speculation though.
Each to
Nobody's
own.
been able to like put their finger on it.
Well, that's the one I was walking through the bookstore. I think I've told you this 1,000 times. I was walking with my mom and I was like, oh, American Assassin, the same author, and action again. And then there it was. I'm like, oh, okay. I'm gonna get this. And then I went on the roller coaster and I have read every book that was ever made, every rap book and all of your books. I'm like,
I love hearing that because it's super. I mean, it's such a testament to Vince. I think just that people have never heard of him and they're like, I don't know, I found it in a hotel toilet, and I
yeah,
read it and I was like, oh my God! And then I went out and bought like everyone in the series,
yeah.
which is just an amazing thing for a writer to hear. And
Or if you're
I'm
like
sure he
me,
heard it a lot before he
or
passed
if
away,
you're
but.
you're
Now
like
I,
me. I start all the way over every year. Every year.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. I forgot that.
Yeah.
It's like, say, well, I mean, when I wrote it, when I did it, took over, before I took over, it was, I remember because I had to read all of them in like 3 months, and it was like 6,800 pages or something. So
Yep.
now it must be
Oh, I can tell you,
like, yeah,
8,600 and
over
some.
10,000. I mean, like 10,000 pages. So
That's
good for
when
you. I
audio
mean,
comes in, Audible comes in.
yeah, you can do like do the Audible and like play it at 2 times speed, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Kyle. Really appreciate your time and
Yes.
continue to do what you're doing. And huge fan. Keep doing what
Well,
you're doing.
thank you. I really appreciate the support. I mean, it definitely makes it all worthwhile to hear, people who've read the books and kind of got what I was going for and had a lot of fun with them.
And
So
my daughter,
thank you. And
who
it's
has
so nice too, because when I started out, you never really got to interact with anybody that ever read your book. So this is really fun.
well, my daughter says thank you as well. She had that rap birthday party, and when I
That's
dropped her off at school, I said, "Today's the day." She's like, "Oh my gosh, oh my gosh."
That's great. We'll tell her happy birthday.
I will. I will. We'll have a fade in birthday party.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, this is my birthday party too, because my birthday's Friday.
Oh, is
Ah,
it? Oh,
Ah,
nice.
well,
Happy
happy
birthday.
birthday.
Did you make
happy
yourself an
birthday.
amazing cake?
Oh,
There
yeah.
you go.
Yes.
Nice.
I have
Well, happy
Dawn's
birthday.
coming up. I need to finish.
Uh,
So, but I
well,
did
thanks.
yours.
Yeah, thanks for coming, and thanks for reading, and hopefully, well, I'll see you all out there, hopefully on tour and out on the internet, the interwebs.
Absolutely.
Yes,
Thank
thank
you so
you.
much.